So over the last 2 days, Russia launched a massive drone and missile attack against Ukraine. It was all the munitions they stored up during their 3-day ceasefire and unleashed 1,623 munitions into Ukraine over the span of the last, roughly 36 hours. That is a staggering amount, and we're going to provide some context on that here in a moment. We also have the initial report of a pretty shocking atrocity. The Ukrainian 225th Assault Regiment has accused the Russian army of beheading 2 of their soldiers, beheading 2 Ukrainian soldiers, and leaving their heads out as a warning to other Ukrainian units. Now, starting with the attack last night, again, 1,623 total munitions fired by Russia. That breaks down to 1,567 drones and 56 missiles. In our understanding at this point, there is a significant amount of damage across Ukraine. At least 9 people have been confirmed dead and at least 44 others wounded. However, as of this recording, my understanding is that they are still sifting through the rubble, trying to find a number of people. I saw as many as 20 that are still missing, so both of those numbers could go higher. Now, in terms of some context here, the opening 48 hours of the war with Iran saw the highest volume of drones and missiles launched by that country at the United States and their Gulf neighbors. That was 1,360 total munitions. A lot more missiles, 525 missiles with 835 drones. But you're talking about 1,360 munitions fired by Iran in the opening 2 days of that war, with 1,623 fired by Russia in the last 36 hours. So another way at looking at this is Iran was building up their arsenal for years, decades, long time, getting ready for this exact fight. When that fight came, they were slinging drones and missiles in every single direction, and it was nonstop, and a lot of those got through. Russia stockpiled munitions for 3 days during the ceasefire that was in place over the weekend. That period of time, waiting, allowed them to amass over 1,600 munitions. So it gives you an idea of the direction this war is headed. We started to see this trend last year, and it's not all that shocking that we're there now. It's going to be a real challenge for Ukraine if this volume of drones and missiles continue for the foreseeable future. Now, a Ukrainian analyst here, Mirshakov, talking about this, said, quote, "In fact, it was expected that the Russian scumbags would break the daily record for the number of launched drones, because they've accumulated more than 1,000 of them during the ceasefire. Plus, they've already accumulated several thousand before that. In the future, I think they will practice this once every few weeks, launching more than 1,000 drones per day. They are unlikely to do it all at once because the number of launch points has not increased yet, and this leads to limitations on the number of simultaneous launches." Now, something I want to clarify here real quick. I think a lot of times when people hear drones, they think of small little drones. What we're talking about here are the Shahed and Gerbera style drones. These are like small cars. They're cruise missiles. They look a little bit different because they've got these wings, kind of a V shape in a way. But this is massive. I'll put up some pictures of the size of these. So when we say, in the events of the last 2 days, 1,567 drones, a lot of those were these. They're huge, right? Even if that thing doesn't detonate, and most of them do, even if it doesn't detonate, it can cause a lot of damage. And what we saw in Ukraine over the last couple of days was significant damage throughout much of the country. Now, the Russian Ministry of Defense says that they did accomplish all of their objectives. They said their focus of this strike was against enterprises of the Ukrainian defense industry, military airfields, fuel and transport infrastructure that supported the armed forces of Ukraine. Russia says that all targets were defeated and all of the assigned facilities were neutralized. Ukrainian President Zelensky, speaking to this, said the drone interception rate was 94%, meaning they shot down or jammed 94% of the drones inbound. Missiles interception rate was only 73%. So, the understanding here is that Ukraine's challenge is, at baseline, these munitions flying in are a problem, but they're able to shoot down a lot more of the drones with a couple different means of doing so than missiles. So Ukraine has been asking and continues to hammer the drum that what they need in terms of assistance from the West are ballistic missile interceptors, things like the Patriot that would be incredibly useful for Ukraine in shooting down some of these Kinzhal and other missiles coming into Ukrainian airspace. Now, the drone interception rate at 94% is pretty impressive. In fact, I haven't seen the exact numbers from the opening days of the war in Iran, but I would not be surprised, based off the number of impacts that we saw, if U.S. and our allied interception rate was below 94%. That is very high. especially when you're talking about, again, 94, I think it was last night was over 750 drones fired. So when you're talking about 94% interception rate, hundreds and hundreds were shot down. So when you look at that volume, there's to be blunt, like there's no one else in the world right now dealing with that volume of incoming munitions with that high of a success rate. There's a reason that a lot of these drones and interceptors are being sought after by our allies in the Middle East and folks all around the world. Now, Zelensky said that he instructed the armed forces of Ukraine and special services to propose possible formats to our response to this Russian attack. So we should see something new. The way they're framing this is not just we're going to launch another attack at Russian refineries or maybe hit an airfield, but something very specific as a direct response to this Russian attack. He added, quote, "It's also very important that the world not remain silent about this terror and stand with Ukraine." Here's the thing. The world's not really paying attention. I wish it was. Trying to do our best here to provide information for the people that are still interested in covering this conflict and following it and understand what's going on, because I think it's really important. But when you look at traditional media coverage, it isn't there. So today just pulled up, I think, two of the top news organizations here in the United States, widest circulation, New York Times and Fox News. Try to grab one from each side of the aisle. And scrolling through this, there's just nothing. So again, last 2 days, 1,600 munitions fired by Russia into Ukraine, and nothing, like at all. I don't think it's mentioned one bit. I couldn't find anything. Now, maybe I glossed over it, but I think at this point, it's pretty safe to say that it was not a leading topic in the Wall Street Journal. And I get it. We're not directly involved in this fight, but it's pretty important to the United States, right? And again, you're not just talking about like a deadly night. We'll go over to Fox News. It's not just a deadly night in Ukraine. You're talking about the largest drone and missile attack arguably carried out since the war began. That feels like the type of thing you want to report on, especially because the United States is dealing with those exact same drones in the Middle East. I mean, the source of these drones is Iran. They're the drones that went after and killed American service members in the Middle East. Those are the ones being fired last night into Ukraine. It would do us well to pay attention to that and figure out how we can get to a 94% interception rate, especially at these low-cost drones. I feel like this entire website is just ads now. Amazon sells outdoor pizza ovens plus 11 more unexpected finds. What is that? What are we... It's been a while since I've been over here. I think it's... Country star Granger Smith traded touring and applause for ministry after tragedy. I feel like I'm on a different site at this point. Anyways, pretty safe to say that neither Fox News nor the New York Times are spending any serious coverage of what's happening just in Ukraine overnight. Now, there are some publications covering that, but look, we've got a short attention span here in the United States, and we've moved on to other things. So I agree with what President Zelensky said there. It's important for the world not to remain silent and to remember what's happening right now. Unfortunately, when we look at the actual coverage, the fact is that most people are not paying attention to the largest land war in Europe since World War II. Now, shifting over to a pretty shocking story just released a few hours ago by the Ukrainian 225th Assault Regiment, where they accused Russia of cutting the head off of 2 of their soldiers. Now, this is the initial report. We're seeing it circulated on a number of Ukrainian channels. The footage is pretty grainy, and the initial footage that I saw was blurred out. So you're already looking at blurred footage. I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to find the source footage on this because that's not healthy to do that. I will do my best to pay attention to the story to find out if we get any verifying information. But the 225th Assault Regiment accused Russia of beheading 2 of their soldiers. Quote, "While carrying out a combat mission, 2 soldiers of the 225th Assault Regiment encountered an infiltrated group of Russians. Rejecting the offer to surrender, our comrades engaged in a battle against the overwhelming enemy forces. Having exhausted their ammunition, the assault troops of the 225th switched to hand-to-hand combat and were killed. Afterwards, the commander of the Russian group ordered to cut off the heads of the fallen and display them on the roadside for demonstration. The occupiers carried out the order without objection. The Russian negotiations were recorded in radio intercepts. The crime was also documented not only by the reconnaissance of the 225th Assault Regiment, but also by other units of the defense forces stationed on the front line. The 225th said, quote, "We know which specific unit committed this crime. We will retaliate in accordance with the rules and customs of war, we will kill all of you. Now, again, we'll wait for more reporting on this. This would not be the first time that we've seen a beheading carried out by Russian forces. The reason I put a little more stock in this than just than maybe another story of this magnitude is we haven't seen an accusation like this in a long time. So it's kind of coming out of the woods. If we saw something like this every week, eventually you'd say maybe not all of these are accurate, but I can't remember the last time there was an accusation like this that came with video footage. So pretty awful, and gives you an idea that it's not just the drones and missiles that Ukraine is continuing to deal with day in and day out, but along the front lines, when these Russians do infiltrate through their positions, this is the type of thing that they're having to deal with at times. Far from taking prisoners, there are Russian units out there, or a Russian unit, I guess we'll say, right now that is willing to behead enemy forces after they've been killed. It's awful. No, there's no place for that in a modern army at all. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.